There we have created services. I think it's interesting, earlier on I mentioned, okay, what we should do is go in and take a look at all the services that exist in our environment and statistically analyze them, and look at maybe the ones that occur on the least number of machines first and maybe work our way up to see if we find some outliers there. This is a great way. We can look at the created services for a time period with using Falcon. That'll give us that information and same data. We can return it in a table, export it to Excel potentially, and then go look at some additional information from there. Maybe use it to see, hey, was this approved software that was installed? Is that a hash of a file that we typically use? Who owns this workstation? That kind of information to see if we find anything that may be of interest to us. But a good persistence mechanism from an adversary standpoint may be to install a seemingly innocuous-looking service in order to continue to beacon out under the radar. So, created accounts. Those would be of interest. I talked earlier also about, okay, maybe I'm just bouncing accounts that have been created against, help desk tickets or tickets that for those requests, making sure that they all line up and that there's process being followed here. But also, one thing that an adversary may do, once they establish themselves, not only may they compromise an environment, get themselves domain level privileges, they may create their own service accounts, which look like they fit in. They may create a username, which looks like it fits in with your standard naming conventions. So that way they can use that as a backdoor later on with a password that they have, or maybe it's no password at all. So they can come in later on. Should you discover them using the current account and you not perform an entire enterprise password level reset, they now have the ability to just use something else that you didn't even know existed and may slide under the radar, again, because you didn't know it was there, and it seemingly fits in. So let's look at some potential exfiltration options. Here's a great one, built-in operating system tool, living off the land, BitsAdmin. So BitsAdmin can actually be used by legitimate applications. Microsoft uses it to maybe download things. There are APIs that other vendors can use as well. So you'll find out kind of what standard and normal looks like in your environment. But at the same time, then you can also use that to find the outliers for its usage. Maybe if it's being used for software installs, maybe in your environment, it's always this user account that owns that process. So anything outside of that may be kind of a standard deviation, in which case, you can more closely review those, the logs for that information, review the hits for this detection or investigation method to find out, okay, should this user be using it? Where is he actually downloading things to or from? What is the size of those things? And that'll help give you some information. So let's take a look at some good usage here. So we see services, some random exe name, had to redact it. But in this case, spawning BitsAdmin. Then we'll go on and look at kind of what a suspicious usage may end up looking like. Here, the ancestry is kind of the key. Services, some executable. You should easily be able to check, hey, if this executable exists in my environment, what's functionality, who owns it, what has it done, how many systems is it on, and why is it spawning BitsAdmin? We're going to have access to the command line here so we can see what it may truly be doing. But that's just some questions you may ask yourself when you find something like this. Now let's look at some bad usage. So again, command.exe being the parent, but Java spawning a command prompt, maybe not out of the ordinary, but also then spawning BitsAdmin. When we look at the command line, we can see BitsAdmin transfer job, HTTP, and it's trying to grab a simple PNG file and write it to the Windows directory and save it as a PNG file. Now, I got dollars to donuts so that's actually not a PNG file. But you could simply go and investigate that. And also by looking at the website that it's going to, and you say, hey, this isn't software. Why is this tool or user, granted in this case we can see the user account, but if we weren't able to, we'd say, why is this going to this website? What is this file? Maybe you go grab it yourself, take a look at it, investigate it. What is the relevance of this URL here? And then see if you can find that artifact on the disk to give you some additional information on why it's being used. All right, here's one last bad usage of BitsAdmin. Again, let's look at the ancestral heritage here. WScript spawning PowerShell, PowerShell spawning some executable I've never seen before, spawning a bunch of command prompts, which we can, of course, go look at and see what the context of those command prompts are, but also including 7-zip. Now, 7-zip being used potentially to compress data within that environment, and then using bits admin to exfiltrate it would be pretty common from this standpoint. We can go and look at those command lines, but using 7-zip, you could see, okay, what was zipped up or compressed, and then in the following command line for bits admin, you may see it being used there to actually send that data off the host, where it's being sent to, and that would give you some more information or context around the framework here. All right, so here's our last interesting hunting we can do with Falcon. And let's just look at the login types. And that would give us usernames and how they logged in. Maybe you just want to go take a look at all RDP sessions, or you want to look at all the service level account logins in order to kind of scope what's taking place. RDP might be an interesting one, only because you're probably going to know in your environment who's RDPing, when and why. It may be, not always, but it may be reserved for only administrators in your environment. Or seeing someone RDP in a workstation versus a server may be of higher relevance, as maybe your help desk always goes to the machines to actually remediate things versus doing things remotely or use another tool. Again, you would be the best person to know the context of its usage, but it'll give you something interesting, or at least a place to go and something to look for. All right, we've included a list of resources that we used for reference, studying that SAN survey, some other information we pulled together to help put together some of the information we used for creating mission planning, which can be helpful. Falcon hunting guide for Windows, where you can go and actually look and find pre-built queries, kind of the information on the return and give you,